we're back with the second video of 11.2 so that we can finish up simplifying one rational. So everything we've done so far has been just one term over one term, or if we have two separate fractions, each fraction is one term over one term. So what happens when you have more complicated looking polynomials? Down here, we're going to start with simplifying one rational. Okay, so we are going to use this process when we are simplifying fractions where there is a plus or a minus on the top, or there's a plus or a minus on the bottom, or kind of mix and match. Okay, so when there's more than one term on the top or the bottom. Okay, so steps in the process. First off, you have to factor. Okay, so that's why we practice that in 11.1. If you need more practice with factoring, go ahead and go back to 11.1 or check out the Delta Math that we have set up for factoring practice. So step one is factor the top and the bottom of the rational expression. Step two, you're going to cross out what's in common on the top and the bottom. So you cross out factors. So it's got to be whole sets of parentheses that perfectly match. You can never just cross out like an X with an X if those X's are inside of parentheses. Okay, it's got to be whole sets of parentheses. Also, if you have more than one set of parentheses that matches on the top and the bottom, you can only cancel out one thing on top for one thing on the bottom. Let's take a look at this first kind of example. It's already factored out. Okay, so the top is two sets of parentheses multiplied, bottom is two sets of parentheses multiplied. We're looking for what is going to match. So we have this x minus 6 here, and we also have an x minus 6 on the bottom. So we're going to cross out an x minus 6 from the top with one of the x minus 6's from the bottom. It doesn't matter if we picked this one or this one, but it's just one or the other. Okay. The last step you do with this is you just rewrite whatever's left over. So on top, we did not cross out an x plus 2. On the bottom, we did not cross out one of the x minus 6's. So this is our reduced answer. Example 4. So we're going to get some practice with all of this simplification where we actually have to factor it out ourselves. Okay, I've made a note on each of these what kind of factoring it is. So the top is a trinomial shortcut. Okay, trinomial, it's quadratic. So we know for a trinomial shortcut that we're going to end up with two sets of parentheses that both start with an x. Okay, I'll keep pink for all the tops and that light purple for all the bottoms. Okay, we're looking for what are the two numbers that add up to get -2 and multiply to get -15. Well, the numbers +3 and -5 fit that description. Multiply to get -15, add to get -2. Okay, now let's go ahead and focus on the denominator. This problem has only two terms, so it's not a trinomial shortcut or a trinomial split the middle. It's difference of squares because we have a perfect square, which is 1x squared, and a perfect square 25, and there's subtraction in between. Okay, so subtracting two perfect squares. The pattern for that factoring is two sets of parentheses. One gets a plus, one gets a minus. Then we take square roots of the first term and put it in the first spot on both parentheses. The square root of x squared is just x. Square root the second term, 25, square root is 5. Put it in both of the second spots. So we're done factoring at this point. That was step 1. Step 2 is cross out what is in common on the top and the bottom. Notice that on the top we have an x minus 5, but the bottom has an x plus 5 versus an x minus 5. You have to make sure that the sign matches as well as the terms. So x minus 5 can cross out an x minus 5. And then we just rewrite whatever is left over. If it's on top, it stays on top, so x plus 3. If it's on the bottom, stays on the bottom. And that's our answer. Number 5, the top has a greatest common factor. You should always be looking for greatest common factors before you get started. Kind of a hint for that is if the first term has a number that is bigger than 1, there might be a GCF. So go ahead and try it out. In the previous problem, the first terms had a coefficient of 1 on both of those, so there can't be a GCF. All right. So on top we have a 5x minus 20. 5 is a greatest common factor because that is the biggest number that you can divide 5 and 20 by. There's no x in our greatest common factor because our second term does not have an x in it. Okay, so we're going to divide both of those terms by a 5. 5x divided by 5 is x, and negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. Denominator. This is a trinomial because there's 3 terms. It starts with an x squared with an invisible 1 coefficient, so it's a trinomial shortcut. That means we're going to have 2 sets of parentheses, both that start with an x. Then we're looking for what are the 2 numbers that multiply together to get 24 and add to get negative 10. Let's see. The big number is going to be negative, so let's make a negative there. And our small number is going to have the same sign, right? If this last guy is positive, that means our signs are the same. So just copy over that minus sign right over there. All right, 2 numbers. Add to negative 10 and multiply to 24. It looks like 4 and 6. So multiply and add works out. All right. A big hint on these problems is that teachers like to give you things that will simplify. So take a look on the top, there's an x minus 4, and there's also an x minus 4 on the bottom. So those guys are going to cross each other out. 1 on top for 1 on the bottom. Okay, if you accidentally put an x plus 4 down here, the hint is that the top had a minus, so this one's probably going to be a minus also. All right, let's rewrite. So draw a fraction bar. Whatever is not crossed out on the top remains on the top. Whatever is not crossed out on the bottom, x minus 6, remains on the bottom. Okay, last problem, number 6. On top, difference of squares, we have x squared minus 9. That's going to be just like the denominator from number 4. We have 2 sets of parentheses, 1 plus and 1 minus, because we have perfect squares, right, that pattern. The square root of x squared is x, so that goes in both first positions. The square root of 9 is 3, so that goes in both second positions. Denominator is a trinomial. It's going to be a shortcut because the first term is just a 1x squared. So that is, again, 2 sets of parentheses, both of which start with x, because x times x is x squared. Okay, our big term is going to be negative, so let's put a minus. Our small one is going to have a different sign because this is negative. They have to multiply to get a negative. So let's see, they have to add up to get negative 1 and multiply to get negative 12. It's probably a 3 and a 4. So the small number here, big number here, double check it. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Awesome. And take a look. We have an x plus 3 on the bottom and an x plus 3 on the top. Cross, cross. Whatever is left on top, keep it on top. Whatever is left on the bottom, keep it on the bottom. All right. Then, of course, if you go to the back of your 11.2, you are going to get the worksheet, and you can find all of the answers worked out on our document. Let me know if you have any questions.